Hello and welcome to the second session on the Component 1 media product Riptide, which is our second music video. This second session is on representations, and just a reminder that as with the first session, you'd do well to have the actual music video for Riptide open on another tab or in a different browser or on a different device in front of you, so that you can watch the video several times whilst you're making notes on the things that are discussed here, and you can pause it and find different examples and so on and so forth. Regarding the learning objectives for this, we're going to, as you'd expect, analyse how representations can convey certain values and ideologies, and then we're going to do some application of theory as usual, with particular looking at the works of David Gauntlet and Bell Hooks, but there's some others that you might see links to along the way. So let's start with some of the social and cultural context that we can consider when we're looking at this music video. And there are different representations that require a thorough investigation within this video, specifically regarding representations of gender, especially women. However, as we explored in the last session on media language, the Riptide video is far from conventional, and as such there are some other representations that should also be considered. And one of these elements discussed as a possible influence on the video was the surrealist art movement pioneered by artists such as Salvador Dali and Louis Buñuel, and specifically their film Un Chien Andalou. Now, this is a film which was very famous at the time, has continued to be a sort of well-regarded film and studied on many film studies and art courses, and it explores the themes of violence and sexual desire in a way that also uses symbolism and dreamlike imagery. The film is supposed to be an exploration of the subconscious mind and includes scenes that are ambiguous and some that are deeply shocking, even by today's standards. According to some psychologists, the subconscious mind is where we all keep our memories and experiences stored up, all of the information and skills we may need at a different time, but aren't relevant at that very moment. So it's kind of like a sort of a bank of places for keeping things. So I'm going to actually show you the opening of Un Chien Andalou to get a sense of how Buñuel wove such abstract ideas together to create a representation of our subconscious minds on film, if that's possible. Whilst you're watching, also consider how the film is obviously similar to the Riptide music video in its use of images and the departure from continuity editing. Even some of the actual images could be considered as similar. There's a quite infamous eye-cutting shot which could be compared to seemingly random images in Riptide, or at least that's something for you to consider. Before I show you a 3-minute segment of this, there is a warning, as referenced just a second ago. Apart from some quite sort of occasional violent scenes, there is one shot in particular of an eyeball being cut, which is even by today's standards, the special effects are really quite gruesome. So if that's something that you would find difficult to watch, then probably best to stay away from the first 30 seconds of the movie or so. This film can be found in its entirety online. It's only about 20 minutes long, but this is just a 3.5 minute segment to give you an idea of the kind of editing and the kind of imagery that Buñuel was using, so you can compare it to Riptide. So just a taste for you there of some of the weirdness and abstract and just quite strange creepiness of Un Chien Andalou. As I said, the whole film is available on YouTube and a few different places actually. But for us to get back to Riptide, a couple of questions for you to consider. Watch the Riptide video again and make notes on some of the images and uses of editing that might be considered as a reference to surrealism in general. How can the Riptide video maybe be considered as an exploration of our subconscious minds or dreamlike states or something like that? And then, secondly, which specific scenes or shots in the Riptide music video could maybe be seen as intertextual references to Un Chien Andalou rather than just about surrealism? So first one about exploring the subconscious mind, surrealism. Second one, specifically, where might it be a reference to that film? So moving on to the main bulk of what we're looking at in this session, that's representations of gender in this video, which is, again, a fairly complex and potentially contradictory issue. The Riptide video is purposefully abstract and misleading, as we discovered from exploring how the video both conforms to the expectations of music videos as a medium and also subverts them. We can expect the same from an investigation into the representations within the video. Finding any one meaning is difficult, and the video can be read in multiple ways. We can assume that this is an intention of the video to keep the audience guessing, or even be discussing what the video might actually be about. One thing that is undeniable, however, is that the video provides an interesting representation of women that does need to be considered in some detail. The question that needs to be answered overall, and that we'll be investigating, is: does the video reinforce a patriarchal worldview, or is the video actually subverting this idea by making a comment on the objectification of women in the media? Watch the video again. What are your initial thoughts on this? What is, if you like, what is your gut instinct on how women are represented by the video? Do some images and sequences seem to stand out more when you've been looking at the video through the lens of representations of women? So let's consider this from a few different perspectives. One reading of the music video is to consider it being quite negative in the ideologies it portrays about women. This comes across in two different ways. First of all, objectification of female characters, and two, the representation of violence towards women. We can consider certain aspects actually related to Laura Mulvey's male gaze theory in this video, particularly in the way that the audience is positioned to look at female characters in a voyeuristic way, and also in the way the camera and editing often fragments their bodies and in some cases sexualizes them. In one scene, for example, a woman undresses in front of us, unaware that she's being watched by the camera and, of course, the audience. In others, parts of women's bodies are framed in isolation, fragmenting them. The women in the video are feminine and conventionally attractive. So, what arguments are there to suggest that Riptide reinforces traditional gender norms and representations of women as ornate, sometimes sexual objects that are there specifically to be looked at? What you can explore with this also is, do the lyrics reflect these ideas at all? The second aspect of this are the representations of violence. There are a number of shots in the video which depict acts of violence or suggest an act of violence is about to take place. It's necessary to question the reasons why these images are so prevalent, whether that be the image of the gun, the woman being dragged under the bed, the quite graphic knife in the hand sequence, or even the repeated close-up of a woman who begins immaculate and then by towards the end not only has her makeup smeared but blood running down her hand. These images actually raise a number of questions about the nature of violence in the video. Is it normalising violence by using it purely for entertainment, or is it making a comment on screen violence itself? Which takes us to our next section about challenging gender representations. Now, music videos, it has to be said, has had quite a checkered past regarding representations of women. It's entirely possible, therefore, that this video is a comment on those previous representations, using devices such as irony, juxtaposition, or even postmodern elements that mean the video might be considered as self-referential. So going back to those close-up shots of the woman lip-syncing, this may be a reference to conventions of music video in general. In the early parts of the video, the woman is glamorous and picture-perfect, but later her makeup is smudged and she becomes quite dishevelled. Is this some comment or reference to the superficiality of music videos, or even how they are representing women in the same way over and over and over and over and over and over and over again? Some parts of the video actually make explicit reference to filmmaking process, with the female character not only looking directly into the camera at one point as it tracks forward, but 2 shots later revealing a camera on what is presumably the director and film crew. So something to make note on here is, how does the video feel different to other music videos you've seen? What aspects make it feel unique regarding its representations, not only of women, but of other things as well? So let's jump straight into the application of theory here. The first one, before we look at representations of gender, I would consider is David Gauntlet and his ideas of identity. Specifically, this middle idea here, that whilst in the past the media tried to convey singular, straightforward messages about ideal types of male and female identities, modern media often offers us a more diverse range of stars and icons and characters from which we may pick and mix different ideas. And so it's clear from an investigation of representations of gender in the Riptide video that it's not necessarily interested in straightforward singular messages, but rather the audience are invited to pick and mix the parts that maybe strikes a chord with them. The video itself deconstructs a range of different stimuli for the audience to interpret as we want to. Well, I say as we want to, but our interpretation of the video will be based on our own cultural experiences, our knowledge, and therefore is going to prompt a variety of different responses and interpretations. So, in a bid to apply David Gauntlet, we need to answer the following questions. What elements of the video are good examples of Gauntlet's assertions that different audiences will find different meanings in the video? And to follow that up, which parts of the video invite an individual to interpret it with their own framework? In other words, which are the parts which are purposefully ambiguous or polysemic? The second model that we can apply from our theoretical framework is that of bell hooks. Specifically her idea that feminism is a struggle to end a sexist or patriarchal oppression and the ideology of domination. And this one's a little bit less straightforward, shall we say. Simply put, this video offers 2 contradictory readings when it comes to representations of gender. Is the video using objectifying and sometimes violent imagery towards women as an ironic, unknowing way to perhaps even make a comment on the representations of women in the media, or perhaps even specifically how women are usually represented in music videos? Or, alternatively, is the video actually reinforcing negative representations of women in the media, or even perpetuating a patriarchal oppression? Is this video highlighting the solution or commenting on the problem, or is it actually part of the problem? So, to finish this off, in your opinion, what would bell hooks say about the video? Remember that Hooks sees feminism as a struggle to end oppression in all of its forms, so it's entirely possible that Hooks could read this as part of that fight, but not necessarily. And finally, are there any other theories relating to the representations of gender that could be applied to this video that we've seen in the theoretical framework?